Subscribe to the channel. Do it now.
Yo, we're checking everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Monday Overreaction Show right here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. And if I'm not mistaken, he is sporting the t-shirt of the sponsor of today's show, RogueShop.com. If you need a little bit of CBD, THC, something to make the joints feel better, or, you know, maybe a joint itself, go to RogueShop.com, use your promo code Orangebloods, and take advantage of your discount that will allow you to get some of the product that might just make your Monday a little bit better. Happy Monday to you, Anwar. I hope everything was good coming out of the weekend. The Texas football team is inching closer and closer to the Texas spring game, which will be on April 15th. We're now at a point where the Longhorns are kind of in the back third of practices going into the conclusion of spring football. Seems like a really good time to do kind of an audit, position by position, of where things stand, with basically a third of the practices still to go. And if there's any good news, it's the fact that there are fewer and fewer question marks, I think, position by position, than we've probably seen during the Steve Sarkisian era thus far. So it indicates a more talented team, a more complete team. I think the question just becomes, how complete are they? It's one of the things that we'll be talking about in today's show.
Yeah, Catch. It'll be really interesting because, like you said, I was thinking about it today, Catch, and I was like, okay, my column is done on Sunday, and I started thinking, well, what would I want to write next week? I said, I guess I gotta write something spring football preview-ish, because that's how close we really are, to the spring game, April 15th. We're right around the corner at this moment. So, I'm very, interested to see how you feel, where your concern level is. I think I have some positions. I'll be interested to see if we are on the same page or wavelength as far as confidence in some of these positions and the concern level for others.
Everybody, I want to remind you, hit that like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. Alex screaming it at the very beginning of the video somewhat like made me think it's less of an issue to remind everybody, but let's do it anyway. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, notifications, share the video later on if you want to, or you can even do it now as we get ready to do a show for the next hour or so. Put that bad boy out on social media, let people know. All right, so here's what we'll do. 1 to 10 concern level, 1 being no concern whatsoever, 10 being Chernobyl. All right?
Okay.
We'll start with the quarterback position and start on offense and work our way position by position all the way to defense and even special teams. Your concern level at the quarterback position on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you right now from 30,000 feet looking at this position, as not just during the spring, but obviously as we head towards the season?
That's a good one, because we got to factor in all the quarterbacks in this conversation, right, Catch? So it just can't be a Quinn Ewers.
The whole position.
It's the whole thing. If it's a Quinn Ewers conversation, I'm not as concerned when I've gotten to put in the other unproven guys as well. Put me at a good 5 from a concern level, Catch. And I know maybe it's a kind of cheating to a certain degree. But Catch, if Quinn Ewers has to come out for a quarter, a half, a game, I don't know right now what's behind him that would make me feel like this team is good, right? I would still have a lot of questions as relates to, what would happen? So if it was just Quinn himself, I'd probably just be like, maybe a 3-ish or so, feeling like everything's going to factor in. But when I got to factor in the other unknowns, Malik, Murphy, who hasn't played since high school, so you're talking about 2 years removed and a true freshman, I'm at a 5 right now.
I think that's probably where I am. I think it's important to acknowledge that this is probably the conversation taking place at most universities across the country right now that in this age of the portal, it's hard to have experienced quarterback play just sitting around on the bench waiting. And, even in the past couple of years, there have been quarterback battles. The loser of that battle for the Longhorns hasn't, whether it was Casey Thompson, he wasn't proven even when he originally didn't win the job, and Hudson Card wins the job before they traded it back and forth in 2021. Casey Thompson had played half of a bowl game. So, last year, Hudson Card loses the job to Quinn Ewers, but there was nothing really proven about Hudson Card. And he ends up doing a pretty solid job when Quinn Ewers gets hurt. But we can have these conversations on an annual basis. And I think we probably will, at some point, the logjam of young quarterbacks will break up. There will be a definitive winner between Arch Manning and Malik Murphy. We anticipate that at some point, the loser of that battle probably transfers. It would be great if they didn't, because maybe then the backup position kind of grows older and you just feel confident that guys are good players. They're just not starting. But, I don't know when we're going to get there. You've got youth at the backup position, and you've got a starting quarterback who's having a really good spring. But we can't really answer the Quinn Ewers questions that exist about him in March or April. I mean, really, Quinn Ewers will answer his questions in September and October, and until then, we're kind of biding our time. But I'm with you. If it was just Quinn Ewers, I'm probably at like a 3 or a 4, because he can't answer everything today. And then with the backup position, it probably kicks it up to a 5, because in a world where the same thing, if Quinn Ewers were to get hurt in the Alabama game again this year and the same situation unfolded, I don't know. It's a big shoulder shrug in terms of what would it mean then if either Arch Manning or Malik Murphy have to play 8 to 12 quarters of football before Quinn Ewers returns. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, Catch, because you got to think, like, no matter what, from the practice setting, we know that guys, look, we saw with Hudson, all we've ever heard about with Hudson Card is how amazing he was in practice. But we know when the lights come on and someone's really trying to take your head off, when you can take off that little red protective jersey and someone is actually can hit you, it's totally different. It's totally different. Malik hasn't been hit since high school like that. Arch hasn't as well. Like I said, we don't know. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing from a Texas fan, because I felt like, Catch, last year, I felt like Hudson towards the end started getting more respect, especially from, the staff itself. And it's not to say they were ever disrespectful, but you could tell he did enough where they said to themselves, you know what? That guy's tough as nails. He's a baller. You start to hear more positive things, about him and about his play. And so, props to Hudson. But once we get past Quinn, it's just, to me, like, oof, you don't want that. Yeah, I don't think you want those problems.
Yeah. But again, I think that's just the way of college football. Like, today will be a day where we don't spend, I think, a lot of time on the quarterbacks. We've had those conversations. There's only so much that you can say that we haven't already said. It's not a huge critique of the team to say that you're a little unsure of what exists behind the starter. So we'll probably go into the season, and that number will stay at about 5, right? I don't know that there's anything that can happen between now and September that in a good way. Right? I mean, I guess there's a world out there where if Quinn were to get hurt and then it was just about Manning or Murphy, then maybe the number climbs from a 5. But I think it's probably going to sit at a 5 for both of us if everything stays status quo from now over the course of the next 5 months or so. And that will just be the way of the quarterback position.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Catch. Totally agree with you.
Real quick, we had a super chat comment. We'll jump into that real quick. Make sure Steve's super chat question didn't just sit idle until we get if we waited to get to the secondary to take Steve's question,
Yeah.
it'd be like an hour from now. If Catalan can't get healthy, is Watts to safety an option with Holmes and Brooks playing so well? I don't think so. I mean, Watts is, to me, their best corner. So you might rob Peter to pay Paul in the secondary, but I don't think they're moving the guy that they feel like is probably their best corner in the name of fixing or addressing a position that can be addressed in other ways on War. And we'll get to the secondary piece in a little while, but I don't find myself overly worried about the safety position, quite honestly, whether or not Jalen Catalan is healthy or not. I think they've got able, quality players, and it's just a matter of a lot of those guys maturing and becoming better players. We'll move on and go to the running back position on the concern meter. This is an interesting one because we haven't seen Jonathan Brooks really all throughout the spring. It's been the Jaden Blue, CJ Baxter show with a little bit of Savion Red mixed in, as well as kind of us not seeing a full load of Keelan Robinson either. It's an interesting position to talk about because I've just mentioned 5 guys that in the fall I think they expect to have. They haven't had that full assortment of players during the spring. Does that do anything for you at all in terms of when you, on a scale of 1 to 10, you've got your concern meter on?
Yeah.
What does it do to it?
I mean, I guess, it's Overreaction Monday for a reason, right, Catch? I'm going to go probably a good 8. With that, I'm going to go 8 for my concern level, and here's the reason why. We haven't really seen these guys get it done, but when it counts, and so we start with this. We start with this, Catch. And I know Jonathan Brooks played a little bit, obviously, in the bowl game. He has a couple of receptions, did okay, but let's start here. We're talking about replacing Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. So we're talking about replacing a first-round talent in Bijan Robinson. Whether he gets selected or not, catching the first round is inconsequential. I'm just talking about from a talent standpoint, he's considered the number 1 back in the country. And then we're talking about, or at least in the draft. And then we're talking about Roschon Johnson, who probably is at least a day 3 pick. So we're probably somewhere in the maybe 5th round-ish range or something to that effect. I think it's disingenuous to sit here and say, no worries, we got guys. Wait, you got guys that good? Wait, if you do, more props to you. More props to you if you can sit here with that confidence when you've got Jonathan Brooks, who's recovering from a hernia. We've got CJ Baxter, who looks good, but he's also a freshman. You got Keelan Robinson, who hasn't played, but he's also more of a role player than anything else. We got Jaden Blue, who's, you hear he's looking good. But then you also have Sarkisian saying, it's hard for me to judge my running backs because he goes, I can't go live every day because that won't be good for the team long term. But the one group that needs to go live are the running backs, because those are the guys that need to get hit. So that how you can see ball control, Catch, right? And, how you hold it going to certain things and going through the holes and all that kind of stuff. So I think he has an idea, Catch, but I don't think he knows for sure. And I'm not going to just sit here and act like replacing Bijan and Roschon is light work. So for me, can these guys get it done? Potentially, sure. And will there be 1,000-yard rush at the end when it's all said and done? Probably. But my concern level today, based off of what right where I'm at, I'm probably at a good solid 8.
Nothing that you've said is incorrect. I don't know how to put a number on what I think about the running back position. I think it's going to be okay. So I'm not really concerned that the running backs will be a problem in the fall. But I also don't think they're going to be anywhere near as good. And everybody can just save me with the just wait, Jonathan Brooks will be just as good as the guys that departed. No, he's not. Like, Texas is going from having Ferraris in the garage to something less than that. And it just remains to be seen what it means in this post-Bijan, post-Roschon world that we live in. Yet I kind of what you said in the end, is the position going to be formidable? Probably. Will they have a 1,000-yard back? Very possibly. Like, I can't say probably. Even though I know Sarkisian's history, and Sarkisian's been very quick. Like, we've talked about that over the course of the last month. That's a guy who thinks he's a producer of 1,000-yard running backs, maybe even knows. Like, that's what he thinks about his offense and what he does. He produces 1,000-yard running backs. I think he internally has the expectation that that's what he'll have this season. And yet we don't know. We think, but we don't know with regards to that position who the main guy will be, how the roles will work out. I'm probably at a 6. 8 is a little too high for my taste, although I know where you're coming from. I think I have bigger concerns at other positions than I do at the running back position. Yet, I think for all of the reasons that you've outlined, we probably can't take running back too much for granted. Because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know who starts game 1. I think I do. But the guy that I think starts game 1 hasn't even been a participant full on so far this spring. So I don't know. I maybe the right number is somewhere in between your 8 and my 6.
Probably that 7.
I think there's a lot of people who think that, hey, it's cool. There's no need to get too worried about the running back position. It was an issue in the bowl game. There's no way to get around the fact Texas lost that game in part because they couldn't establish the running game. They were never able to get Jonathan Brooks going in that game. They ran Keelan Robinson into the wall. It didn't work. And then by the time you get to the second quarter of that game, it was a heavy dose of Quinn Ewers throwing the ball a lot. And he had some success. There were moments in the bowl game where Quinn Ewers played really well. And then there were other quarters, like whole quarters of the game where the passing game was kind of stagnant too. Not all quarterback related. A lot of drop passes. I mean, it's hard to not think about that game and not think about the drop passes that occurred on the offensive side of the ball. But they never could get the running game going. And that was our first taste post-Roschon and Bijan. And it's literally the last time they suited up for a game. I mean, you could make a case that your 8 is not outlandish based on the fact that when they played the game 3 months ago, it didn't go great at the running back position. So it is a question, how big of a question mark it's going to be. I think a lot of people feel like from a numbers standpoint, they really do go 5 deep at running back. So when everybody's healthy, they've got a lot of guys. But what does that mean? What does Jonathan Brooks look like as a starter? Is Jaden Blue really ready to go from not being played at all in the bowl game to being a starting level player in 2023? Is CJ Baxter in year 1 ready to take on such a sizable role that you have to count on him from week to week instead of him being found money to a certain extent because you're really good with other players around him and you can let him grow up slowly? Like, not even Bijan, 5-star running back coming out of high school, not even Bijan played as the 1A guy who you could count on 20 carries a game. So I don't know. I'm not that worried about it, but there are reasons to be slightly concerned. I do think most Texas fans are taking the running game for granted, and maybe rightfully so, but we should all have our foot on the brake a little bit.
Well, the last thing I'll say, Catch, because I know we got more positions to get to, is and some people did say it correctly, Bijan is kind of a generational talent. Well, what does this offense look like without a generational talent? You know, that you don't know. Like you haven't been forced to answer that question over the last couple of years. And Sarkisian hasn't been forced to answer that question either. So, you know, what this looks like, like I said, don't take anything for granted.
Julian says that the running back is a 4 step down from last year, but with more experience, O-line, quarterback, better wide receivers, the running backs won't have to be as great for solid production. Julian, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'd probably, my instincts though, move it up a couple of notches from a 4. You know, there are probably 9 games on this schedule that great running back play won't be needed. But in the toughest, most difficult games of the season, this offense won't go if it becomes one-dimensional. And, you know, this program is going from great at running back to potentially solid. I don't know that we know what that impact looks like, in part because we still don't know what it means for Quinn Ewers to be in year 2. Anwar and I will be the first to acknowledge that if Quinn Ewers is playing at a very, very high level, that's the tide that lifts all boats on offense, defense, you name it. He is the ultimate wild card, but it's hard to even speak on that at this point.
By the way, Catch, can I do this real quick? Just you know, so people have the understanding, because, you know, you talked about Sark and, you know, his history of 1,000-yard backs. I'm just go through the names of guys that he had, and I'll go through it real quick, okay? 2009, he had Chris Polk, okay, with a little over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. Chris Polk has 1,400 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns the following year. 2011, he has 1,400, 88 yards and 12 touchdowns. Then there's Bishop Sankey with 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns, 1,800 yards and 20 touchdowns the following year. He gets to USC, he has Javaris Allen, 1,400 yards, 11 TDs. 2019, I fast forward, Najee Harris at 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. 2020 is 1,400 yards, about 26 touchdowns. So, and then of course it gets Bijan for 2 years. So to follow that train of thought, you would have to say one of these guys is in that 1,200, 1,400 range. And I'm just that to me today, based off of lack of participation as far as springtime is concerned, I'm just like, I'm going to pump the brakes on that just a little.
Yeah, Texas may very well have 1,000-yard running back in the fall. I just don't know who it's definitely going to be. To me, this could be a year where you see a guy with 900, another guy with 700, another guy with 500. You could still have a really good ground game. I don't know that there's a dominant force. We'll see. What about the wide receiver position, Anwar? On a scale of 1 to 10, your concern meter at wide receiver is what?
My instant gut says 5.
Wow.
My instantly I say 5. It's hard for me to go lower than that. Catch, we didn't see 1,000-yard receiver last season on the team, and Catch, I think if all of our practice notes, Catch. And maybe 5 might be high, so maybe I'm going to go somewhere between 4 and 5. So maybe I'll go 4.5 just to split the difference. If within our practice notes, Catch, I didn't hear things about drop passes, I'd probably be like, okay. But you're still hearing that, and you're hearing that from the guys who are supposed to be the starters and the stars of the team. And so because of that, I'm saying to myself, okay. Let me see. I need to see a little bit more and a little bit more consistency throughout before I go fully there and say I have no concerns. So I'm probably 4. I'll bump it down from a 5, maybe like 4 at the least. 4.5 is probably where I'm at just a little bit, just because there's a lot of unproven guys in here as well. You still got Isaiah Nair returning from an injury. You got A.D. Mitchell. you flashed at Georgia. We got to see, what happens to Xavier Worthy in year 3. Jonte Cook. There are a lot of guys I love. I love Jonte. But I still got to see what they do on this level.
I'm at a 1.
No concern.
I mean,
not a
to
1.
say that they can't get better, but the question is my concern.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really have concerns about Xavier Worthy, even though, his name pops up as a guy that's still dropping passes in workouts. I'm not concerned about it. What I see is a team that legitimately has a top 4 or 5 that they, by the end of last year, it felt like they had 2 guys. A banged up Xavier Worthy that we really weren't too aware of how banged up he was. And then Jordan Whittington. And then on that outside wide receiver position, it just wasn't a lot there. I think the presence of A.D. Mitchell means a lot. This is a guy that, if you were to ask me what are my concerns about A.D. Mitchell specifically and being able to stay healthy, I might bump it up a little bit from there because he hasn't been able to do it. But you add in Jonte Cook, you add in a developing Casey Kane, who is not getting bumped off his block with ease. I mean, he's at least rising to the challenge of competition and making it a competition. I think they've got numbers that they didn't have a year ago, talented numbers. And that doesn't, and I don't even have to include Isaiah Nayor to get there, or I don't have to sprinkle in a DeAndre Moore to get there. I think they've got depth at wide receiver that didn't exist a year ago. And a lot of these guys are now upperclassmen. Jordan Whittington's a senior. Xavier Worthy's a junior. A.D. Mitchell's a junior. So Casey Kane goes into his 3rd year. There's a lot of guys that have been on campus now a little while. It's not as youthful as it once was. I may end up being wrong, but my gut instinct is believe me, we're going to get to other positions on the field, and there are people who are like, way to go, Catch, love it. And they may not like what I have to say on the concern meter at other positions. I'm just not really – again, I'm not saying that it's a perfect position. I'm not saying that it needs to improve or it doesn't need to improve, because it does. I think consistency is still a word that the coaches themselves would say they want to see more from this group. But my concern meter just isn't high at all. It's pretty low. I don't worry about the wide receivers maybe the way that I do the running backs, even if we could go one by one and on some level, a lot of these guys still have a lot to prove. I think collectively as a group, I think it's really strong.
It's interesting. Catch, I had to look it up while you were talking. I wanted to make sure I had it correct. 2019, Catch. That's the last time Texas had a 1,000-yard receiver. That was Devin Duvernay.
It doesn't happen a lot. I mean, Texas as a program doesn't crank out 1,000-yard receivers the way that it cranks out 1,000-yard running backs. That doesn't concern me a ton.
Do you think there's a 1,000-yard receiver? Is there one guy you'll say to yourself, that's guaranteed today, that's a 1,000-yard guy?
Well, I thought Xavier Worthy should have been that a year ago. And for reasons that fall on both his shoulders and the quarterback's shoulders and an injury, as it turns out, it didn't happen. But when I look at Xavier Worthy, he's still by far and away the most productive receiver through 2 seasons in the history of the program. Whether you're looking at yards, touchdowns, whatever metric you want to use, in the history of the program, Texas has never had a more productive receiver through 2 seasons than Xavier Worthy. He still led the Big 12 in what was, by all accounts, a disappointing year. He still led the Big 12 in touchdown receptions, and not by one either. He led the pack by a couple in a year where I don't think scored in the last 3 games of the season when he could have got to double-digit touchdowns, and it just didn't happen. if everything goes as according to plan, I think Xavier Worthy has that type of season. But I thought that a year ago as well, and it didn't happen. So I can't take it for granted, but I'm not worried about it. I won't say zero concern. Maybe it's like a 2. Maybe instead of a 1, it's at a 2. But we're a month into spring football if you include the week that was spring break as well. And I just haven't found myself concerned about the receiver position.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. I like it. Let's see. Everyone is cheering for Catch now. Keep
I'm
that same
telling them
energy
in advance. Just wait, guys.
Keep that same energy.
Just wait. The wide receiver position may be the only one they do cheer me on. What about tight end? This one's a funny one because you've got an All-America candidate at the starting position. Then you've got a solid Gunnar Helm who, as a role player, I think is certainly solid. But, boy, they're a high ankle sprain away from that position just not mattering on the team anymore.
Yeah.
So how do you handicap the number one guy is great.
Yeah.
But the depth behind him to be like strong contributors, right? Because I think you and I would say Jatavion Sanders should never come off the field. Ever. Like, no. He should have close to 100% participation other than when he needs a cup of water. And I would even then at that point say, get your cup of water when the defense is on the field.
Yes.
There's nobody else like him, though. And most teams don't have a Jatavion Sanders. He's a unique talent. But so how does that impact how we would handicap our concern?
That's a tough, I probably went 5 with the quarterback because that person you have to play the quarterback, right? You can scheme around the tight end, if necessary. If Jatavion's not out there, then all of a sudden you could find creative ways to get other guys the ball. So because you could try to make it work, I'll probably go just a 3 for me, Catch. But that being said, if Jatavion's not in the game, it is a game changer. But I feel like you could do enough things with the Gunnar Helms, the Juan Davises, the world, where you could probably try to make a couple of little things here work. So probably 3 with your hope that he stays healthy all year long.
Thing is, this position is just a wasteland if Jatavion's not there. You're talking about having a legitimate NFL level player at a position that, there are probably only 4 or 5 guys in the country that can have a conversation with being in Jatavion's class of player. Brock Bowers at Georgia obviously is, I think, the consensus number 1 tight end in the country. But when I looked up the data of returning players, you can certainly make a strong case that Jatavion is number 2. But beyond that, it's a hard position to recruit. It's a hard position to find guys that are certifiable badasses. So you end up not worrying a whole lot about the things that you just can't have. You thank your lucky stars that you've got Sanders for another season. And then beyond that, this position changes.
Yeah.
It's almost like it becomes the fullback position in a way. It's like, we didn't even discuss that, but if the Longhorns ever needed to go into short yardage situation, like who's the guy that, I don't know, who fills that role? We'll see. Maybe it's a defensive lineman in short yardage situation they put in the backfield. Sometimes you just don't worry about the things that you don't have. I think the offense fundamentally changes, period, if something were to happen to Jatavion Sanders. So I don't find myself worried about it. There's not a ton of concern because there's a knowledge of what exists and doesn't exist. The number probably needs to be. I don't personally feel. I'm like you. My first instinct was to say 3, but the long-term health of this position is one I have real question marks about. So maybe it needs to be a 5, because when I see what Jeff Banks has brought in from a recruiting standpoint with Will Randall, who's coming off of an injury last year at the high school level, Spencer Shannon, who really got mixed reviews last year as a high school player out in California. I don't know what happens to the tight end position long term in a year from now. But for now, it's gold. I mean, just having Jatavion Sanders makes this one of the better tight end rooms in the country. But if you take him out of the equation, it changes dramatically. The good news is Steve Sarkisian, for most of his career, has not featured the tight end as a major portion of his offense. Didn't do it at Alabama. I mean, get an extra receiver on the field and tight ends be damned. I'm going to say 5.
Okay.
Just as a matter of principle, based on this team likes to play a lot of 2 tight end sets as it stands. And I don't know. They're an injury away from, I think, not being able to do that at all. So that alone puts it, I'll put it at a 5. But I don't walk around day in and day out overly concerned about the tight ends. It just is what it is.
That's fair, Catch. It's kind of like how you felt about how me with the running backs. It's kind of how I feel as you explain it. I can't say you're wrong for the thought process, because at that point, if Jatavion has to miss a quarter, I don't even know what you're doing with the tight ends at that moment.
It's almost like having a great kicker, right? And then it's like, well, what's your depth at kicker? It's like, well,
yeah.
Man, if like a Grammatica injury occurs and like you got to go to the backup, it just, you can't worry about those things. They can happen. Texas has a real luxury this year at that position, and then everything changes, I think, moving forward. This one, the next one, the last position on the offensive side of the ball is one where I wonder how much you and I are on the same page. When we talk about the offensive line, it's better than it's been. It has a legitimate All-America left tackle anchor. It has a right tackle that I think is a certifiable plus Big 12 player. I don't think it would be crazy at all if Christian Jones earned first team all Big 12, or not first team, but just all Big 12 honors this season. I think that could happen for him. And then beyond that, there are more questions that I think than there are definitive answers. So from a concern standpoint, with the offensive line, you are where?
3. I'm only concerned maybe if because of an injury standpoint, but to what you've said, Catch. You've got Kelvin Banks, so you feel good about that position over there. You feel good about Christian Jones on the right side. Depending on what happens at that right guard position, you assume that Cole Hudson comes in and slips back in. But there's Devin Campbell, there's Cam Williams as a possibility, somewhere, and again, if Cam Williams gets in there, does Christian Jones bump into potentially a guard situation? Fine with Hayden Connor, fine with Jake Majors, at center. So I just, for the most part, Catch, I feel pretty good. Now, that being said, Sarkisian's on the record. I had this in my column and everything that said some of those young guys are still going through some growing pains. And so, he still needs to see a little bit more out of them. So those guys, there's some guys that excelled. Obviously, Kelvin Banks came in, Catch, he excelled. We've seen that from DJ Campbell doing pretty good. Kelvin Banks was next level. DJ Campbell played well. And now Cam Williams seems to be a guy that's kind of catching some steam. But I feel like from a starting standpoint, Catch having a good base of like 7, which is probably good enough for what you probably want to achieve. Not that worried. I feel like whoever ends up being that top 5, I think they're going to be pretty good when it's all said and done.
I'm probably at a 5.
Okay.
Mainly, look, I almost want to break this down by, like, I have a 1 at the tackle position. Banks, and Jones. That's the best tandem of tackles in the Big 12. So I don't worry about tackle. Amazing that we've reached a point where Christian Jones isn't a concern for me. Although I'm going to forever point out that when everybody was selling their Christian Jones stock back in his left tackle days a couple of seasons ago, I held on to it. He's such a mammoth guy, and at his best, even when he was playing poorly at times, his best plays would make you go, God, if he could just do that every play. So I'm not worried at all about the tackles. I do worry about the interior. It just wasn't plus level play a year ago. I'd like for Cole Hudson to not be hurt. I think he's a guy that needs a full offseason to take that next step. I don't think DJ Campbell is truly ready yet to be leaned on as a plus starter for this team. So much so that we've been hearing we may just have to, by any means necessary, maybe Cam Williams takes over at guard. I don't know who Hayden Connor is truly as a player yet. I have confidence that he's going to end up being a pretty damn good player, but I don't know that that was what he was a year ago. I think he was the best of a substandard group of players. And then Jake Majors is a guy that's like a lightning rod for discussion. Most Texas fans on Orangebloods seem like they want to run that guy off. I certainly don't feel that way. I think he's serviceable, but I kind of feel the entire interior of the line is serviceable. And if there was a Junior Angelau level serious injury, I have concerns about the depth. The second team offensive line, is really young. It's almost exclusively all of those players from last year's recruiting class that aren't named Kelvin Banks or Cam Williams or Cole Hudson. I mean, give Kyle Floyd credit for immediately getting a lot of contribution out of young players from a year ago.
By the way, the second group, according to Alex, to your point, left tackle is Peyton Kirkland. Left guard is Neto. Your center sometimes has been Hayden Connor mixed in with Sawyer Gorham Welch. Right guard has been Malik Agbo, and then the right tackle has been Cam Williams.
Of that group, there's one that if you had to play in a game, I think Cam Williams is going to be fine. I think he'll be solid at worst, but I don't have any faith in any of those other guys at this point. So I'm at a 5 because I think they've got 6 guys they can count on, but a lot of those guys that aren't – everybody other than Christian Jones and Kelvin Banks is a question mark for me to varying degrees. They're not all the same level of question marks, but I do have questions, and I can't certifiably say going into this season that any of those guys are going to be plus starters. They may be capable. They may be serviceable. The offensive line may be fine in totality and maybe even better than fine when you add the tackle play in. And yet I find myself over the course of this spring, I've been thinking a lot more about my concerns on the offensive line than almost any other position on the team.
So what ended up being your final number, Catch, from
I'm at a 5.
5? Okay, gotcha. Make sure I'm
right. But, I think if I'm not above a 5 at a position, we're in a pretty good space. Because even quarterback, we're at a 5, and yet you wouldn't trade Quinn Ewers for anybody in the Big 12.
No.
So everybody in the Big 12 has to be at a 5 if Texas is at a 5. You feel me?
Yes. Something to be higher than that.
Yeah. So, I think that I think at the end of this exercise, anything that's above a 5 are your real question and concerns.
Yeah.
5, it just means you're not a total homer and going too far with hyperbole with us being so close to this team. It's the only team we see and follow on a daily basis. So, you can almost just overanalyze things. So if it's not above a 5, I'm not that worried. but 5 feels like a good, solid place for a group that's still largely unproven outside of the 2 tackles.
That means when we get to defense, Catch. Oh, I think I know where this is headed.
Well, let's start with the defensive side of the ball. And look, let's
Okay.
start with a position that I don't think we're going to be that concerned about, defensive tackle.
No, I mean, because we're talking about Byron Murphy, talking about Tavondre Sweat. You know, it's kind of funny. You talked about being kind of not selling your Christian Jones stock and how the payoff is. I wish Dustin McComas was still here because he held on to his Tavondre Sweat stock like you held on to your Christian
He still
Jones
has
stock.
it.
He's
gonna cash in eventually.
And but yeah, those guys, nothing but positives Catch for about both of those guys and what they've been able to do in this off season. And you know, I don't want a guy to catch strays per se because he's really is a good dude. But I do believe that they'll be able to get more than what Moro Jomo gave at that position. You know, I don't look at it and say to yourself, like, how do you replace that kind of productivity? I'd look at it and say,
drafted.
Yeah. But I still, well, potentially.
I know your feelings on the NFL draft. Moro is the one guy among all of the Texas guys that really helped himself out in workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's going to get an uptick for potential. I think he'll go into that Taquan Graham 5th round, 6th round-ish kind of area. But I do think he absolutely will get drafted in a world where you and I both know there are guys that we think will go in the 5th round in this draft that will go undrafted. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
You and I are not suckers for the NFL draft. If anything, we both lean towards conservatism.
Yes.
You may be a tad more conservative than me.
I'm way conservative. I think mock drafts are exercises in futility. That's how conservative I am. I mock everyone's mock draft.
Yes.
And I know I usually pisses off Alex, but it's just, yes, I'm very, because anytime, if you say, because to me, you always got to add 2 rounds or more to someone's projection. So if someone says, okay, that he looks like he's, 1st round pick. All right. So like he could easily be a 3rd. And if he looks like he's a 4th or 5th, then 4th or 5th means he could probably be undrafted. There's high.
So what's your number for defensive tackle?
3. I think it's an upgrade, to be honest with you.
I'm probably at a 2.
Okay.
I don't know that any of these guys are all-stars. I think both Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy have it in them to be among the best players in the Big 12 at their position. They haven't yet been that, but they're not hurting from a numbers standpoint. And, we'll look at guys like Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, and you see the way the staff is spreading those guys out. So they're getting some end play. I've got more concern about them being dependent on the outside than I do on the inside. As things currently stand, they go about 4 or 5 deep at defensive tackle. They could probably withstand an injury if they had one and still be solid. So I don't worry about the position. That does not mean that I think it's full of ass-kicking terrorizers. It just means that I think they're solid. I think solid at a minimum. And again, I think if we were to look at the rest of the Big 12, we were to ask ourselves, does anybody in the Big 12 have a tackle tandem better than Byron Murphy or Tavondre Sweat on paper? I don't know who that would be. I don't know who I'm making that trade with. So maybe the Baylor guys, they're pretty good inside. But, if we're talking about inside your conference, you're in the upper echelon on paper of returning talent. I'm just not concerned. I'm not overly – look, we're about to hit some positions on the defensive side of the ball where 3s or 2s won't be my answer. But if I'm a Texas coach, I'm putting my head on my pillow at night and I'm sleeping comfortably about the defensive tackle position.
Yeah, Catch. I think that for me, for me, Byron Murphy has the potential to be that breakout guy.
He does.
That Jalen Ford was for this team last year. Like, I think it's right there for him.
I don't think he has an All-America ceiling, but I didn't think that about Jalen Ford a year ago either.
Yeah, I think he's got it. Judging that position is obviously a little bit tougher because there's going to be some things that don't show up on the stat sheet that you're going to have to go. You have to go to Alex, look at disruptions and things to that effect. He's there, but to your point, we're going to get to other positions where you're going to say to yourself, "Oh, okay,
Barry's waiting for it. Let's just do it."
All right, you want to go? You want to go
defensive
to that
end?
Position? All right,
so
we do.
Real quick, that's both the Buck and the Jack.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we're including both. So Barry, understand we are including both into this position. Here's the problem for me, Catch. Again, if it's just Barry, I'm good. I'm good with the conversation, but I've got to include everybody else in here. And because I have to include everybody else in here, Barry will help out the conversation a lot. He will help. It's kind of like a class project. One guy will help the entire grade, but the grade is still probably going to be like a C. So I would still say I've got to be at a good 6 for my concern level with there. Again, Barry helps out the grade, but without him, I'm probably at an 8 or so.
I'm going to channel my inner Billy Bob from Varsity Blues. I give it a 10. 10. 10.
Oh, wow. Panic button.
It's not a panic button. Chernobyl is 10. So, but we're calling this our concern meter.
Yes.
And here's where my concerns are. I think Barron is an all Big 12 level player going into this season. Again, this literally has nothing to do with Barron Sorrell. I mean, hell, we've already almost shipped him out to the NFL after this season.
Pretty much.
I worry significantly about Barron's backup. Before we even get to the other side of the defensive line, I worry about what this team – look, for me, Barron Sorrell is in the group of top 5 most valuable, important players on this entire team that you could not lose for an injury. I would feel more comfortable about putting Arch Manning on the field at quarterback than losing Barron Sorrell for any reason at all for like a game or two or whatever. I don't think they have anything close to Barron Sorrell behind Barron Sorrell. So I find myself look, it's kind of rich man problems to find yourself worried about backup positions more so than a lot of other things. But I've thought a lot about what's behind Barron. And look, when you go to the other side, that other defensive end position, who knows? You and I look, I gave Ethan Burke my number 2 spot on my MVP list for the spring because he's winning a position battle right now. But I don't know what that means when we get to the field during games. I don't know what the pass rush looks like. I hate having to overly depend on one guy from a pass rush standpoint. And look, Texas actually has good interior pass rush with Murphy and Sweat. But you really need your edge guys to be the deal closers from a pass rush standpoint. And I don't know. I think in a year from now, we're less worried about this position as these guys get a little older and a little experienced. But man for man, player for player, Texas has Barron Sorrell. They ain't got nobody else that you can count on and say they've delivered the goods in games that matter. Not Ethan Burke, not Justice Finkley, not Jamon Tapp, not Alfred Collins as a backup to, Barron Sorrell. So maybe a 9, maybe a 10's a little hyperbolic, but boy, I have concerns. And given that none of those dudes pushed Ovie Oghoufo off the field a year ago. I mean, would have been nice if they could have. They never could. Ovie played 700 snaps. And now that's got to be divvied up amongst young players that are unproven. And it's just a big old concern question mark for me.
Oh, Ovie sitting there just eating his lunch. Like, what the hell?
I didn't say anything bad about Ovie. I just said
they didn't push him.
You would like to have gotten better production. Look, Ovie was an upgrade, and Ovie was rock solid a year ago. I absolutely would slap a rock solid tag on Ovie Oghoufo. But, Hayden Connor was kind of rock solid. And I'm speaking about him and he needs to get better. Is he truly a plus player? If Ovie had been a plus player, he'd be going to the NFL right now and not to his third team in 4 seasons.
Okay.
So but do I know 1,000% that one of these other guys is going to play at a more productive level than Ovie did a year ago? I don't. I might think that Ethan Burke will, but I don't know.
Well, if that's where you're at with the edge position, I'm excited to see where you're at with the linebacker position.
I'm at a 9 or a 10 with the linebackers.
I was going to say they can't be any lower.
Look, we've identified the 2 areas of the team where if I'm the position coach, I'm putting my head on a pillow and I'm not sleeping comfortably every night of the offseason. And I don't care what the coaches say about David Benda and how much improvement he's made. I know they'll sing the praises of Jet Bush. I know that Maurice Blackwell is a guy that they feel like he's got some capability. But everybody outside of Jalen Ford for me right now is a big old question mark. I give 0 benefit of the doubt to. 0. So they can talk during the offseason about progress and how much better these players are playing from where they were a year ago. I'm not listening to any of it. So that doesn't mean I'm right. This is a concern meter. And just like you can't tell somebody how they can feel, right? You can't ever tell, hey, you shouldn't feel a certain kind of way. Well, I do. You can't tell me how to feel. You can't tell me what my concern level should be. And everything might turn out perfectly fine. Maybe Jalen Ford is the tide that lifts all boats at the linebacker position. But what I see is a team that played a 3 linebacker formation quite a bit down the stretch last season. When Overshown was available, he never came off the field, and they played Tucker Dorsey a lot last year. He played a lot of football. And as things currently stand, you're replacing 2 very experienced players. And one of them was an absolute plus player, and you're replacing them with guys who, generally speaking, have been disappointments on the field. That tag doesn't go to everybody. I wouldn't call a guy like Maurice Blackwell a disappointing player because he's just still at an age where he hasn't had a chance, but he's completely unproven. Completely unproven in a role where they're going to demand a lot from. And I worry about the linebacker position a lot.
Yeah, Catch, to your point, once you get past Jalen Ford, it's just, not only question marks, the best talent might be the young guys, but you still got to wait for those guys to develop, so you still, you have to wait for Anthony Hill and hope he can maybe get on the field this year. But some of the other guys, from that linebacker class, that might be the future, Leona LaFowles and those guys of the world. But when does that come? When does that happen? Is that
could be a year away?
Yeah, and so this year ends up being, if we might be at a position where, Sarkisian gets out of the spring and says to himself, okay, I might need to go and see if there's a linebacker available in the market and transfer portal, because that might be an area that you want to make sure you can kind of shore up. Because remember, he didn't get confident in Jalen Ford catch up until, training camp. That's when all of a sudden it was like, I think we're good now. I think we feel pretty good now, but they've still kicked the tires on other people. And this might be another one that it's hard to find. Catch, you can speak to this. And I want to, it's hard to find good linebackers, especially in recruiting nowadays, isn't it?
I mean, it ain't the time. Look, I will say this. You can find linebackers in the portal. Stopgaps. Guys, even a year ago, there were guys that were 100 tackle linebackers that had hard times finding teams where they were definitely going to be starters. And that is, it's a weird, you can't find edge rushers, but you can find guys who've been productive linebackers at high levels. Texas really hasn't been too concerned with serviceable guys. I think they eventually took Diamontre Tucker-Dorsey last year as a serviceable guy because it got late. And they're like, we're not going to find anybody else. Can this guy help us some this season? The answer turns out to be yes. I think there's got to be – look, those guys have to look in the mirror themselves and say, David Benda, we're okay. We don't need anybody. And I think they have a harder time doing that in private when they look themselves in the mirror. Right before they go to bed, they brush their teeth. They look themselves in the mirror. Are they staying up an extra 10 minutes because it's on their brain, or are they not? I think they probably are. I think it would do them. Boy, if I told you right now, because I don't know that I think Diamontre Tucker-Dorsey's good. I think he's serviceable, but serviceable proved to be really valuable last year. Could they find somebody serviceable in the portal? I think yes. I don't know that I'm 1,000% confident, though, that serviceable is good enough for these coaches. If it's the right guy and he's a senior, and they know that he won't be on the scholarship books next year, maybe, because I think that's how they viewed. I don't know that if Diamontre Tucker-Dorsey had 2 or 3 years of eligibility when he was in the portal last year, I don't know that they would have taken him. I think part of his value was, can he come in and do a job, and then can we be done with him almost immediately? Yes. I think you could probably find a player like that. I don't know. If it were me, I would go get that player. I don't know that the coaching staff will do that, though.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see what the next 2 weeks look like, right, Catch?
And they're 3 over on scholarships as it stands.
Oh,
so
wow.
They're at 88 when all of the freshmen show up. So they're going to need some attrition just to get under the cap when the season starts. If they're going to add guys through the portal, now if you add 1, now you got to get rid of 4. And the thing is, I'm kind of writing about this in my 10 Thoughts from the Weekend, which will be up later this evening on Orangebloods. A lot of the fat has been trimmed from this roster. It is not a roster where you go, him, and you just do that like 10 times. You're like, those dudes can all go. They've all mostly gone. So now to trim the roster, you got to start trimming Sarkisian guys that are have been in the program for like 2 years or less in order just to find guys to get rid of. So I don't know. We'll see. But for me, I feel better about the edge position with Burke and Finkley and Vasic because the problem about linebacker is at times you want to play 3 on the field at the same time. So not only do you need more guys, you have 0 depth there. So, when we look at that edge spot, there are 4 guys that are trying to fill that one spot that you think by committee they maybe can get it done. I'm not so I just don't in my head don't have definitive answers at the linebacker position. And you know what? Jalen Ford kind of gets the Baron Sorrell treatment, and that if we're talking about 5 guys on this team that you just can't lose, it's Banks and Sanders on offense. It's Sorrell and Ford on defense. And then we can quibble probably about that 5th spot and who it would be. But there's nobody behind any of those 4 guys.
Okay. All right. I'm good with it. I'm good with the catch.
What was your number again?
My number's 8.
Okay.
My number's 8.
Cornerback.
This is a tough one.
Is it?
For me, because I'm not concerned.
Well, neither am I. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah. So, it's a tough one because I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, am I overcooking the grits, by any stretch of the imagination? But I feel good about, of course, Ryan Watts. I feel good about Jade. I think both of those guys are future NFL players. Props to freaking Michael Taft for working his way into that nickel position catch. I mean, we'll see how if that's ends up being his final resting place in there. But, overall catch, I feel good about the guys that they have behind them, whether it's, Jordan, whether it's Brooks. I feel good about what they have there. Malik Muhammad will probably be, he needs, he'll gain some weight. I think Gavin Holmes has been coming along lately. And so, I mean, there's
I'm at a 1 at corner.
I'm probably at a 1 at the quarterback position as well.
Cornerback's the only spot on War where I'm like, they need more. Can they play 5 corners? You know what I mean? Like, they got more corners that I think can play.
Yeah.
Than they've got room to play. There will be good corners that aren't on the field. Whereas some of these other positions, we just talked about 1 at linebacker. There will be times that they want to play 3 linebackers, and I don't know that they have 3. They'll play 3 corners on every given play, but they got 5 that I think I legitimately feel pretty damn good. Like, there's some questions. Gavin Holmes, Terrence Brooks, they're really good, talented players that are fighting for just the ability to get on the field. I'm really confident that the Texas is going to be pretty damn good at corner. And I think Ryan Watts has a chance. He has a chance to be the guy this season that you think Byron Murphy might be. I could absolutely see Ryan Watts being a first-team all Big 12 corner this season and springboarding his way to the NFL draft off of a really good season. I'm at a 1 with corner. I don't have any real my concerns with corner is that they've got more than they can put on the field. And I don't feel that way about any other position. Other than wide receiver a little bit. If everybody's healthy and Isaiah Nayor comes back and suddenly you're like, hey, we're 5. I'd like to get DeAndre Moore on the field, but got to take somebody off. Maybe wide receiver is the only position I feel the same way about with regards to corner.
I think spot on about it. Like I said, I hear you with Watts. I think Jade and Watts are both future draft picks. Like I think those guys are both going to have really good seasons, just based off everything I've seen and heard from both of those guys. Ryan Watts for sure jumps off the page. Like, not, my gosh.
Our guy, River Oaks Art Society, says, who's played 4 quarters and not just come in as relief? I mean, Watts, Barron, he counts as a guy who's been playing in the nickel, but can absolutely play corner. Terrence Brooks, down the stretch last season, played pretty damn well.
He's really good. Really good.
And Gavin Holmes is a guy that's played like 600-700 snaps a year for Wake Forest before transferring over to Texas. So the answer is Texas got like legitimately 4 or 5 guys that have played 4 quarters of football and been able to be leaned on without, Terrence Brooks didn't get Texas beat last year. And that's what you ask about with look, we've seen bad secondary play together, Anwar. We've covered teams that have had a hard time covering people. Texas, they did a good job last year. We didn't sit back and ache and moan all season long over cornerback play. And quite frankly, that includes a Deshaun Jameson that might not have been as good as the guys. I mean, Deshaun Jameson, as it turns out, was just an okay player. And that's not me telling you that. That's Big 12 coaches telling you that. That's NFL scouts telling you that. He was certainly serviceable, but I don't think I think they feel better this year at corner than they did a year ago when they had Watts transfer in. You had Barron returning. You had Deshaun Jameson coming back. I have more concerns about safety than I do at corner, and my concerns at corner are minimal. Not only do I think they've got numbers, I think they've got NFL players. I think they've, I think they're really talented at that position. What about safety?
Safety is an interesting one, Catch, because they're without Jalen Catalon, obviously, for the spring. But Sarkisian has said he's not as worried about Catalon when he comes back because he has played before, so he's not worried about him missing the spring. I like Jaron Thompson. I believe you like Jaron Thompson as well.
He's a good player.
So yeah, very, very good, very solid. I feel like he's coming into his own. And then there's some question marks after that. Sarkisian has talked up and Keaton Crawford as a guy who he feels like it's coming along, feels like he's done some good things this spring, and also very good as far as a special teams contributor. But we're talking about safety, right? So I can't, even though he went off top and talked about how he felt like he was the best special teams player in the Big 12. You still know what about that safety position? Sarkisian did
about Crawford.
About Crawford, he felt like he deserved like a Big 12 Special Teams Player Award. I put that, if you check out my column from yesterday, and I know the wife had the birthday. By the way, happy birthday, Heather. I feel like a bad friend because I didn't post it on her Facebook wall, and I know that's
she ain't checking Facebook.
Yeah, but okay, good. I can post it today.
Now, my mom's birthday is today.
Oh, she checks.
Oh, my God. I called her at 10. True story. Called my mom a little after 10. I was like, hey, happy birthday, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, I haven't really gotten out of bed yet. I'm kind of chilling. And she's like, 33 people told me happy birthday on Facebook. She not only knew, she knew the exact number.
That's the old, for older people love to just hit refresh and see who has posted what, because your mom is definitely active. So that I know exactly what I need to do as soon as I get off of here.
33 as of 10:11 a.m.
Wow. Yeah. So yeah, I got to make sure I'm part of that 34, 35, because I won't hear the end of that one. But I put my concern level, Catch, probably at a good 4-ish, only because I feel pretty good about Catalong, and I feel pretty good. This is not an injury that's going to, prevent him from being at 100%. I feel good about Jaron Thompson. If Keaton Crawford comes in as a third guy at the end of the day, I feel good about that rotation. So probably only at a 4, just as far as just making sure, Catalong is 100% when he comes back.
I was going to say 5, but 4 is probably more in tune because I think about the positions I've given 5s out today, and safety's probably not at that level. It's probably at a 4 because the elephant in the room is in a pinch. They've got enough corners that if they wanted to do what they want to do on the offensive line and say, who are our 5 best guys? Can we get our 5 best defensive backs on the field all at once? If it meant moving a piece around, I think they could. And so I'm at a 4 for those reasons. Jalen Catalon for me is going to be found money. Yeah. I am not counting on him at all. So if he plays, fantastic. If he plays really well, super. But in my head, Catalon hasn't played at a high level in 3 years. The guy that was all SEC coming out of high school a long time ago. So a lot of people are like, if Catalon gets back on the field, it's an all Big 12. Slow down. I mean, if it happens again, awesome. He has that level of ability somewhere inside of him. Now, it might be retired. Some guys' bodies can only take so much. You know, a lot of times when college coaches look at small guys in high school, it's like, oh, he's a great player. And they're like, well, you worry about how the 5'9", 5'10" guys hold up over time. He's the perfect example of a guy who's really freaking good. But this sport, man, it takes its pound of flesh. It is not for the weak or the timid to play it in the SEC as a secondary piece and be a little bit undersized. He's had the shoulder issues. They're saving him this spring. They're hoping that but I don't find myself worried about Jalen Catalon. If it happens, it happens. I think it was right to take him in the portal, but he's a little bit like a lottery ticket. If you hit, every time you buy a lottery ticket, even like the $5 scratch offs, you know the odds are against.
Yeah.
You can win. And when you scratch that $5 scratch off and you win 25, you're like, sweet. But you know when you buy it that there's a better than even chance that you're not. And he's kind of that guy. I'm not even saying he's like a mega lottery. He's like a scratch off ticket. And there's very well you might win 25, 50, $100 off of that, but you might not get anything either. But it's fun. You take the upside. But I don't really worry about their numbers at all. So I'm probably at a 4. Mm-hmm. When I hear that Keaton Crawford is one of the 2 guys playing safety, what I really think is that one of the corners might eventually get moved. That they've got to figure out who their 5 best are. I don't think they feel like they're at a place yet because they still don't know what they've got in Catalon. So I think they've been pragmatic, and I think that they are going to take their time before they make any final decisions. But it wouldn't shock me if we get to August and if Catalon for any reason is skipping a beat, that from a numbers standpoint, they might move somebody into that position because I think they'll feel more comfortable. You know, they still get to bring back Jalen Gilbo. Mm-hmm. He comes back.
Yeah.
You know, he was playing Jahdae Barron level snaps early in the season last year at that nickel spot. So there is a world out there where all their guys are back, and maybe a Malik Muhammad gets a little bit more comfortable, and they're good in numbers. I think they've got versatile guys, and I don't fret about it pretty much at all. Matter of fact, you could make a case that it's maybe more of a 3 than a 4 for me.
Yeah, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. You know, it would be interesting to catch I know we're getting close to wrapping up. If we had done the same thing for each coach on the staff and put and went and said, you know, on our 1 to 10 scale, where would we be with each coach from?
Have we really been going for an hour and 20 minutes?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, then let's knock out special teams real quick.
Oh, wow. Okay, go. Fine.
I just stay at a 7.
Yeah, I stay in a constant state of worry when it comes to kickers and
Even when
punters.
you're good.
Me. I feel like kickers are 50-50 in college from any level. At any distance, I feel like they're just 50-50. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to make it. I don't know.
Well, we knew they were good when Cameron Dicker was around.
Yeah.
And we argued like punter, kicker, even going into the NFL, punter, kicker, what should he do? I think he's probably picked the right spot because he's kind of earning a place in the NFL as a place kicker. A year ago, they took a huge step back in the punting department.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in Ryan Sanborn from the portal, but his numbers are pretty
Yeah.
Just being completely honest. So yeah, I just unless you've got, and look, Texas has had some of these guys, right? The Cameron Dickers of the world, the punters that we've seen them have. I mean, you can say it multiple. They've been good. They've had guys that you didn't worry about. I don't think that's not where they are right now. So I'll just by default sit at 7. And
yeah,
the good news is we're not at 10.
Yes.
Because my default position can be 9 or 10. I'm setting it at 7 right now, but I don't know that they're going to be awesome in the kicking game. And Sarkisian and Banks want to be awesome in the kicking game. I don't know that the pieces are in place for awesome.
I mean, I don't know. And look, Catch, I know things happen, life happens, it is what it is. But when I say guys are 50-50, if Texas makes a simple kick versus Alabama, I mean, what does last season look like from a narrative standpoint and everything in between? A simple, short kick is all you needed. That's why I'm just like, I will always stay in a constant state of worry whenever a kicker trots out there on the field. Because
there's no sure thing as a sure 3 points.
No, not when it comes to kickers. I'm so sorry. That's why I say River Oaks. I hear what you're saying. You can trust Banks, but he's a great special teams coach. But I just told you there was a chip shot that was missed versus Bama that totally changes the narrative of everything last year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. All right, well, let's wrap this bad boy up. This was a healthy exercise.
Yeah, it was.
In the end, linebacker and defensive end / edge are their own. They're clearly the 2 biggest worries, right?
Mm-hmm.
For you, if I'm remembering the grades correctly, running back would be your 3rd biggest worry?
Running back, I think I had both of the running back and linebacker at an 8.
So you're 3, regardless of order.
Yes.
Edge, linebacker, running back.
Yes.
And I think for me, was edge, linebacker, and maybe offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I was only at a 5 on.
Yeah, you're 5. You're on at 5. Yeah.
I think I gave everything 5 or under other than linebacker and defensive end. And we should just one more time, my final parting shot. Apologies to both Barron Sorrell and Jalen Ford. It seems unfair that those guys are bundled inside of groups that I have such concerns about. Just in the event that Barry's still in the chat or Jalen Ford has friends or family in the chat, we love them dudes. It's a big position with a lot of players and needs, and one guy can't do it all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it has been fun. I've definitely enjoyed it. And I said at some point we need in the summer, we do the same exercise for the coaches.
Well, and even come back and do this again in August.
Mm-hmm.
When we're about 2 weeks into camp. Yes. Catalan's back. We'll know more about Isaiah Nate. You know what I mean? Suddenly, some of the guys, Jonathan Brooks, there's a whole bunch, Keelan Robinson, there's a bunch of guys, and it may be 2 weeks into August we do this again. The numbers change a little bit. Maybe they change it edge and linebacker as well. Like, we'll see. Look, guys, do us a solid. Like this video. Hit that thumbs up button right now while you're watching. Just do us that solid. Subscribe to the channel. Get notifications. And by all means, share this with your friends and family. Show them the video. Let them know that for daily Texas Longhorn conversation, they can come over to the Orangebloods YouTube channel, and we've got them covered on the regular. But for myself and Anwar Richardson and the guys over at RogueShop, use that promo code Orangebloods. If nothing else, get you a badass weird t-shirt like the one that Anwar has on right at this exact moment.
That I'll go pick up my kids from school wearing today.
Legal. Texas is home for legal CBD, THC, and more. Go to RogueShop.com. Use that promo code Orangebloods. Until tomorrow when we've got the modcast, and I've got potentially Jason's good for tomorrow, right? And then he's gone?
Who knows?
Okay.
I gotta go back and look.
I've got, I think, a special thing lined up for the modcast tomorrow that should be a lot of fun. So you guys stay tuned. We will see you all tomorrow. Until then,